Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Killett, your host. Get ready for some fun for the next 2 hours because it's Flannel Panel. The Flannel Panel's back. That's where we get together, we wear flannel shirts, and we talk about the news of the world from a Catholic perspective. Our guests are Joe Heschmeyer, apologist here at Catholic Answers, and Chris Check, president of Catholic Answers. Hello, Chris Check.
Cy, I'm glad to be here. And Joe is an apologist at Catholic Answers, but not exactly here at Catholic Answers.
Oh, well, that's true. Sometimes he's here. He was here the other day.
I like it when he's here.
Yeah.
He's fun to have around. But he's in Kansas, and I'm going to be in Kansas this weekend.
I don't want to have to explain all of how the geography works. I'm actually in Missouri right now.
Oh, yeah. Don't explain geography to us on the
I
radio.
won't.
First of all, because I won't understand it. Second of all, because it's geography. Joe Heschmeyer, thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure. I'm happy
kind
to
of
be
being
here,
here.
even remotely.
Isn't it weird that here kind of does mean something different now that we can all be in a room together on video?
Yeah.
I'm going to blow your guys' minds. This is going out over radio waves
What?
and the internet.
What's
So
even happening
here
right
is
now?
a very relative concept.
All right, so what we do on the Flannel Panel, as I said, is we talk about the news from a Catholic perspective. So many things happening in the world. First thing, I did not see any negative updates about the Pope's health today. Did either of you see anything about it? It seems that he's in the same.
There were rumors there was slight improvement. It's hard to know with the Vatican press office, to tell you the truth.
I mean, it sounded like slight improvement. So he might be getting a little bit better. On the other hand, I actually had a doctor's appointment today, and the doctor was like, you don't want somebody at that age in the hospital for that long. And then he was telling me what would happen in a U.S. context, and I had to explain to him yeah, but this is Italy. I was in seminary at the same time. A guy, thanks be to God, he was a former paratrooper. He was on retreat, and the trail he was on a mountainside gave out, and he fell what would have been to his death for anybody else. But because of his particular training, he was able to survive, but it shattered his legs.
Oy.
But then they took him to an Italian hospital, and at least the way the story came down to me, partly through him, partly secondhand, it sounded like they were way more humanizing of him in the Italian hospital, but they mostly just massaged his feet and were nice to him. Whereas for the actual medical care, he had to be medevaced all the way to the U.S.
We have Italian listeners, I can't believe
let
that you're
them
saying
call
these
in and
things.
see if they disagree.
Well,
no
there
one is
were-
more critical of Italians than Italians.
There were a lot of jokes when Pope John Paul II was shot that the miracle wasn't that he survived the bullet, but that he survived the Italian hospital.
Well,
Yeah.
the joke,
I mean, I say this in all genuineness.
Yeah.
This, we know what certain things mean. Like when we talk about someone being in critical condition in an American context, that has very particular meaning. And I think one of the things that makes it difficult to know what to make of the Pope's condition is we're sort of having to translate two different medical systems.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
U.S., they really encourage you to get out as soon as you can. You have a baby, and they're, by the time you're done pushing, you're pushing your way out the revolving door.
Yeah.
And it's just okay. Well, see ya. Your insurance doesn't cover more than 32 minutes or whatever, and that's just not the case everywhere. So all that's to say, I don't know what to make of a long hospital stay.
It's not good.
It would be very bad in an American context.
Oh.
It may not be as bad
okay.
in an Italian one,
All right.
but I don't know.
Chris?
but hospitals are a place where there are sick people.
Yeah.
And
right.
if you,
Right.
it's not a good place to hang around. So, for example, if you've just had a baby, it's good to get out of there if you can.
Yeah.
There was an old joke among seminarians many years ago, and in fact, when you hear it, you'll know how old it is. But who do you see if you get sick in Italy? And they would say Dr. TWA. So.
Oh, get on the plane and go home?
Yes, exactly.
Hey, kids, TWA used to be an airline, but back when flying was fun. And I did. A doctor that I know said in an 88-year-old, a pneumonia in both lungs is almost always a death sentence. But he said not always. So they always end it hey, I'm not saying he's going to die, but it does seem quite. Serious. It seems very serious.
Certainly the takeaway should be that we should be praying for our Holy
Amen.
Father.
Amen.
And,
Amen to
and
that.
it's a good reminder of his humanity. I know sometimes we can be critical of things we disagree with him on, and including, I think, all of us here. But we don't want to lose sight of the man, his humanity, and his, this is someone trying to follow Jesus Christ who's now facing a very difficult trial. So both as our spiritual father and as our brother in Christ, he's worth praying for.
And
Amen.
if these are his final moments, we want him to make a holy death.
Yeah, that's right.
Tell me about that, Chris. What does that mean?
To make a holy death?
Yeah, yeah.
Just like
No,
it's just like it sounds.
I know what it means. I want our listeners to know. Wink, wink.
Yes, to be prepared to meet your maker, to die. Well, first of all, in the state of grace,
Uh-huh.
right? But then I would say, additionally, disposed or freed from connection even to venial sin, if possible, and to have your heart and mind focused on eternity. How would you describe a holy death, Joe?
Yeah, to die in friendship with God and
Yeah.
purified of any attachment to sin. That's it. You know, we
So
want to
that's why
die.
he's an
as
apologist.
friends.
He
Tell me if this is neurotic or if there's a theological or faith problem that I have with dying. I'm not at all concerned with meeting my maker. I'm concerned with the fact that he's going to tell me the truth about myself. I do not look forward to that part of it.
This is one of my major problems with marriage. Is when I'll ask my wife, like, "How does this look?" and she'll tell me the truth.
Yeah.
So
How about in preparation for that, Si, Joe and I sit you down periodically?
And tell me the truth about myself.
Yeah, with that-
That's my point is I'm spending my whole life avoiding it. Why would I want that?
By the time you'd be all ready to go.
Really? You guys think you could straighten me out and get me ready to face Jesus, who actually knows the truth?
Jesus is going to say, "Thank you, Cy Cal, for
He's
all the
not gonna say
good
thank
work
you.
that you did to bring souls to me." No, he is going to say that to you.
Really?
Sure he is.
Oh gosh, I would be like, first of all, Jesus, let me just say I am so relieved that this is how this is going.
Okay, now wait a minute. He is going to say something about McDonald's and
Oh,
Diet,
knock it
and
off. He
Diet
is.
Coke.
I support a lot of workers, Chris. I'm supporting the economy. All right, I didn't want to tell you guys about this part, but I'm going to tell you. I'm going to spring it on you now. There is a story I want to cover with you, an important story, maybe the most important story of our times right now. The Academy Awards is on Sunday, and so first of all,
I forget about that.
First of all, will you be watching the Academy Awards?
No. I'll be
I'm going to be
I-
honest with you. I'm going to be driving back. I'm going to debate James White in Arkansas on Saturday, and I'll be driving back to Kansas City Sunday. And if the road conditions are good and the driving goes smoothly, I might try to catch dinner with one Mr. Christopher Check. But that'll just depend.
Oh, actually, that's not going to happen, Joe, because
Oh.
my plane leaves at 2.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
why did you invite me to dinner? You're a monster.
No, wait
All right.
a minute. You already told me you wouldn't be able to make it. But okay.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I
He's
said it
not-
wrong.
Okay, can you guys stop making plans on the radio?
I
Well,
will
But here's my
be-
point about the
I'll be
Academy
on an
Awards.
airplane.
It used to be
back
a
from
big
Fort
deal, the
Scott.
Academy Awards. People watched it. I don't think anybody watches it anymore. So what I wanted to do was I'm going to tell you the 10 movies that are nominated for Best Picture, and I'm going to ask if you saw them, and if you did not see them, have you ever even heard of them?
I'm
Okay.
actually extremely excited about this
'Cause you think you saw some of them?
I became obsessed with one of them that I have not seen
All right.
because of how hilariously bad it seems to be from all of the reviews.
All right, I think I know which one it is, so I'll start with that one. One of the 10 movies nominated for Best Picture is Emilia Perez.
Yes.
Have either of you heard? You've heard of this, Joe? I believe it's.
I almost want to see it. I'm not going to see it.
I believe
I
it's-
almost want to see it.
I believe it's a touching drama about a drug lord who becomes transitions from being a man to a lady, and then becomes nicer because he's a lady. That's my summing.
Let me pitch it. A Frenchman makes a movie.
Yeah.
About the cartels in Mexico
Yeah.
and announces proudly that he did no research about this. So it is all these paper thin
Oh, it's just in his
stereotypes
mind.
and
Yeah.
tropes about
Oh, yeah.
Mexico. And there's this horrible murderous drug lord, and he decides he needs to become his true self by having them mutilate him.
Oh,
and
I thought that. I didn't know that he was becoming his truth self. I thought he was hiding from the law. So he
No, he becomes all nice and serene because
now he's a lady.
everything you need to know are it's the level of analysis you'd expect of a B-rated stand-up where it's men are like this and women are like
Yeah.
this. And people from Mexico are like this and people who call themselves trans are like that. I mean, it's that level of analysis.
Yeah.
But it was being treated very seriously by the Academy as this brilliant, provocative, thoughtful film. And oh, by the way, it is unnecessarily and badly a musical, but all of the
Is it all-
music
I
is
didn't-
really bad.
I didn't know any of this. I didn't know it was a
Oh,
musical. Have you seen it,
I've
Chris? Did you watch it?
watched-
Did you and Jackie
This
head
is
out?
the
and-
first time.
This is the first time you're hearing of it?
Yes.
All
Well,
right.
I think I heard about the
All right, the second of the 10 movies, A Complete Unknown. Have you seen it?
Oh, that's the
is that the
movie
Bob
about
Dylan one?
Bob Dylan.
That's a Bob Dylan one. I saw it.
I wanted to see that. I have not seen that.
I actually really enjoyed it. I
I've heard
really
only
did.
good things.
John,
really enjoyed
John
it.
Sorensen liked it.
And I hope that it wins. And that Timothy, how do you say?
He's in The Bear.
Timothy
He's in The Bear.
Chalamet, or I don't know how
No.
you say, but
Right.
he was fine. He was just great. The actors were wonderful in it. It was just a really good old fashioned good movie. Conclave. Have you ever any of you heard of this?
Another one where it's unnecessarily pushing transgenderism. Kind of a weird theme we got going
Don't
on.
ruin
but
it
I guess
for
people
people.
know what the
It's a
Academy likes.
It's such a clever ending. Don't ruin it
You know,
for
I feel
people.
I feel bad about Conclave because
What?
it has a lot of really first-rate actors. Stanley Tucci's a fantastic actor.
Did you see it?
No.
Did you see it, Joe?
Oh no.
No.
I saw it. I
How
can't believe
did
it.
you like
I've
it?
seen several of these movies. I saw it, and again, the
You
acting
had
is
2 hours?
magnificent.
Oh, he's a talented actor.
It's the whole thing. It's just magnificent. It's the problem is the script. It's just ridiculous. But
You know who had the best take on that movie?
who?
Cardinal Sean O'Malley.
What'd he say?
Because he was like, yeah, I was actually in a conclave and they're not like this. And you're just like,
Oh, well,
what a
he's
great
cheating
not
in
many
his
people
review.
Get to drop that.
I was in a conclave. They're not. Yeah. All right. Nickel Boys. Either of you seen it?
No.
Ever heard of it?
No.
All right. I have no idea what it's about. We're moving on. I'm Still Here. Have you seen it or heard of it?
No.
That's why it was nominated for Best Picture, because nobody normal has seen it or heard of it.
I saw Ford versus Ferrari.
Wasn't that good? That's like the
was-
last good movie they made.
It was a great Go America movie. If you really want to get your jingo going on America.
and then he took his foot off the gas, and he was trying to be a team player, and then he suffered for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that movie was hard. Like, I mean, it was a great movie,
It's
but
true,
like
though.
seeing what happened was that was rough. And
All
it's
right,
based
this-
on a true story.
But
you
I'm
know
trying to
what?
go through
I
this
take
year's
that
movies.
back.
You guys pick a movie from like
I
1943.
think
When was that made?
It
I
was
think.
about 10 years ago. Oh,
Okay.
I saw a movie made in 1942 recently. It was superb.
What was it?
It was called It Ends Well the Day, or The Day Ends Well.
Oh, yeah,
It's an Italian realism meets British kind of twee about some Germans who masquerade as English soldiers and take over a village.
Are there
based,
any French in
Went
it?
the day well?
We've left
it
the
went,
French out.
went the day well.
Went
Thank
the day
you.
well,
Went the
all
day well. It's based on a short story by Graham Greene.
Oh,
Highly recommend this film.
Directed by a Brazilian. It's a British war film.
Yeah, but it's kind of it's Italian realism.
is there any transgender in
it
it?
turn-
His
no,
last
I'm
name's
only seeing
Cavalcanti,
transgender
so
It
movies.
he's probably-
turns unusually violent for a 1942 picture.
All right, let's go back to the year 2025 on Sunday night. This movie will also be up for the Best Picture, The Substance. Have you heard of it? Have you seen it?
Accidentally, no.
No.
It's-
Very funny, Joe.
He made an accidents and
yeah,
substances
yeah.
joke. Sort of a joke.
See, that's one you could do a trans substance.
I
And
would
it
like
wouldn't
to-
be just the kind of trans that Hollywood does.
Demi Moore stars in it.
Oh, this is the one where she's her other self or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
She's her older self, or she makes a deal with her younger self. Or,
Yeah, and apparently she's very, very good in it. So I don't know, but how about this one, Dune Part 2? Have you ever seen it? Have you ever heard of it? Dune Part 2.
Oh, yeah. Dune is
It's up for-
is excellent.
up for
I don't know
Best
if you know this, but all of the
Dune's
young
a
people in the
Catholic.
office
The guy that wrote him.
All
are,
of the
are
what?
kind of obsessed with Dune.
Who's obsessed with Dune?
Like all the younger guys in the office.
Oh, here in the office? Well, they are. Yeah, one of
Yeah.
them is actually cheering right now from the other. Yeah, I saw that one. It was very good. It was a little disappointing in a few aspects, but it was very, very good.
I could have done without Zendaya's character, if I'm being honest. She didn't fit the kind of feel for the movie. Like the girl boss doesn't really make sense in that world, but neither here nor there.
The novelist is a Catholic, right? Isn't
Frank Herbert?
Yeah.
I don't know
No, I
anything
think
about
he's
him.
pretty anti-religious.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
He and Tolkien. Tolkien hated his work, if memory serves.
All right, how about
because
this one?
He's kind of cynical of.
Don't know why I thought that.
How about this movie? Have you heard of it? Have you seen it? Wicked.
I've heard of it.
I've heard of it.
I have not
and
seen
I
it.
have no intention of seeing it.
Okay,
Something
Honora.
Wicked did not come this way.
Ray Bradbury.
Honora?
Honora.
No.
No. All right, that's one everybody thinks is going to win. By the way, The Brutalist.
I
read a
haven't seen
review
it,
of
but
that.
This
this
movie
morning.
has something every movie should have in it. I have not seen this movie, but I know from word of mouth that it has something every movie should have in it. As a
1960s church
61-year-old
architecture?
man, I can tell you every movie should have this. I'm an expert, and every movie should have it. An intermission.
Oh, nice.
Yes. Whatever happened to the intermission? I can't make it through a movie. I haven't made it through a movie in 33 years.
Did it have
The last movie I made it through was The Lion King.
Did it have an overture?
The Italians will put intermissions in movies that don't have them.
Good
Do
for
you
the
know this?
Italians.
Like
that,
it's called an intervallo. You put it in wherever.
You go get a
and so
coffee.
you'll be watching a movie midway through a scene. Let's be like, yeah, everybody stop, get some concessions, go to the bathroom.
I really think
It's
this
great.
would help movie attendance if they would just go back to putting an intermission in movies. So, all right. So I saw 3 of those. I saw 3 of the movies that are up for Best Picture this year. So I feel like I'm better than both of you.
I saw 0.
I've seen one, yeah.
Which one did you see, Joe? Dune?
Dune?
Dune Part 2. All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll get right back to the real news of the day from a Catholic perspective with Joe Heschmeyer and Chris Check. Flannel Panel on Catholic Answers Live.
Hang on. Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
EWTN Radio is growing. Are you an experienced radio producer looking for an opportunity to help forward Mother Angelica's mission of evangelization? We need a passionate, multi-skilled, talented professional who can manage all aspects of producing world-class radio programming. You could be the newest member of the EWTN radio family. If this is you or someone you know, email a resume and cover letter, including salary requirements, to ewtn.com/employment.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. Chris Check, president of Catholic Answers, our guest. Joe Heschmeyer, apologist extraordinaire, also our guest. It's the flannel panel. We're all wearing our flannel shirts. We finally, 9 years into this, or however long, we finally are starting to all wear our flannel shirts to the flannel panel.
I'm very proud to say I remembered an hour before the show.
You did?
I went home and got a flannel shirt.
Good for you, Joe. You're really growing up.
Thanks.
All right, this is the one we say that from a Catholic perspective. I want your Catholic perspective on this because I have a bee in my bonnet about this, and sometimes I get a bee in my bonnet about stories, but I don't know if y'all read this, but it made
We did because you sent it to us.
Well, did you,
5
Joe?
minute-
That's
five-
very generous. What
5
story
minutes
was it?
before the show.
I did not send it 5 minutes before the show. I sent them last night,
Okay.
and don't even pretend that Joe reads
I
this.
clicked on it and then I got distracted.
All right, but you're very modern. Indigenous man from isolated Amazon tribe makes contact with the outside world. Papers and websites around the world had this story. A young man from an isolated indigenous tribe who approached a riverine community in Brazil's Amazon returned voluntarily to his people shortly after, authorities said. The encounter occurred at 7 p.m. local time on Wednesday in Bela Rosa, a community along the Purus River in the southwestern Amazon. The man had 2 logs with him and seemed to be seeking someone to help him start a fire. They tried to show him how to use a lighter, and he couldn't do it, and then he left without any trouble. I just want to know, do either of you have any reaction to this story at all?
It's kind of fascinating. I mean,
So
I'm reminded of a different set of cases, but just go ahead, Chris.
well, evidently there are tribes that the government of, is this Brazil?
Brazil, yeah.
Makes a deliberate effort not to be in contact with.
Well, yeah.
Or to keep isolated. It may be a better way to describe this.
Well, it's called voluntary isolation, but I think there's legitimate question about how voluntary it is. And it's actually, there are voluntarily isolated tribes, and we say tribes because these are people who are living at a tribal level in India, in Mali, I think, in various countries in South America. And
There's two problems here.
Okay, please, because nobody ever wants to talk about the problems, and I see big problems with
Well,
this. Go ahead.
first of all, there's just the problem at the natural level.
Which is?
I'm assuming that this particular tribe is not especially, I don't know what the word is, advanced, and they might benefit from some advancements that have been made over the past, I'm going to go with 4,000 or 5,000 years. Well, for example, in things like literacy, written languages, medicine, monogamy. Although I don't know, maybe it's monogamous. I suspect it probably isn't. But then there's the supernatural problem.
This is the one that bugs me.
Well,
Go
there's
ahead.
unbaptized people in the age after Jesus Christ has come and said, "Go and baptize everyone."
And we treat that like that's a good thing. We say, "Oh, don't bother them," and we have a direct command from Jesus: "Go and make disciples of all the nations." He didn't say, "Except for these people that you treat as if they're children that don't have a right to know the truth about me." I am just
and so Brazil,
deeply offended.
Brazil is a Portuguese colony, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
I mean, it was founded by Christians.
I don't think it's still a Portuguese colony.
Well,
for the record.
okay, in a lot of ways, the United States is still a British colony, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't lose our colonial the characters that we got
Yeah,
from
we're still part of the British Empire. We just run it now. So this.
I want to hear the calls for that take. So go ahead.
Please, especially British. First of all, if you're British or Italian, not your day today, but give us a call. Go ahead, Chris.
They just moved,
Neil Ferguson over here.
Greenwich over
the
to
center of gravity moved to Washington, D.C., yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So from Greenwich or wherever it was. So, but this is a country that was founded by Christians.
Yeah.
Well, and missionaries and Jesuits and Franciscans.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's this. I do think there's a very serious problem with like this young man coming and making this contact. In that, we know what happens because we've seen it when European diseases are transferred to unvaccinated and unprepared.
They held him for a time to see if.
But they didn't hold him. They follow up. They do like this public health thing where they check everybody that had any contact with him,
Right.
And monitor him. But then they monitor the area to make sure nobody tries to make contact with this. He looks like a kid to me. He's a very young man.
So they're sort of like zoo animals. They're being treated.
That's the way
they're
we're
being
treating
treated
them like
zoo
animals. Yeah.
like they're a novelty exhibit.
And there's a lot of evidence that
But
they
they're
want
persons.
stuff. Like they see airplanes flying over. Like, first of all, almost all of
They
the
don't
pictures.
know how bad air travel is.
Yes, they have no idea about TSA. But all of the pictures you see of uncontacted people are them looking up in the sky because it's a drone flying over them or something where they're like, well, what's that? And then
It
so you take
becomes
a
a
picture,
deity, and
and they're all painted red, looking up. And the fact is, like, the honest truth is, some of these tribes are quite violent. We have like if I as a parent said, look, I'm going to go out to the woods and raise my kids completely separate from society, from all healthcare, from all education, where you would say that's a crime. But when governments treat people this way, as if they're some kind of children. Now, on the other side of that, there is this problem
like
of
an
colonialization. We should not colonize these people.
No, but it's sort of like they're sort of this anthropological novelty.
Yeah, right.
That
but
we want to
like
study.
they're not people with immortal souls.
Right,
Like they're
right,
they're like some kind of Highland gorilla or something.
Mm-hmm.
They're people.
Yeah. Do you know the John Allen Chow, I think, case from 2018? Missionary. I think he's an evangelical Protestant.
that got
who
killed
goes
in
to-
India.
Bible
Yeah,
and-
North Sentinel Island, and they murder him.
Yeah.
Right.
And everybody demonized him. I mean,
They murdered
he's
him!
A 26-year-old guy
Right.
who is murdered for trying to preach the gospel. And the Darwin Awards in 2018 mocked him and gave him an award for how stupid he was for dying. And you just think like, wow, glad you weren't around when the apostles were getting martyred.
I know.
Like either we think people are worth evangelizing even if they're hostile, or we don't. But if we don't, then I don't think we deserve the title of Christian. And I think there was actually, I'm going to figure out how to say this in a way that doesn't feel like just a political commentary. We're worried about the risk of disease more than we're worried about the risk of damnation when it comes to the North Sentinelese, when it comes to indigenous people in Brazil, and maybe in some contexts, all of ourselves. That we'll shut down all the churches if we're worried that we might get disease. And at a certain point, that cowardice is culpable.
Well, I happen to agree with the people who say we shouldn't take their land. We shouldn't even infringe on their land. We should be extremely careful about disease and contamination. But they have a right to education. They have a right to material goods. They have a right to health care. And they have a right to the gospel. Yes. Crying out loud. All right, right back with more Flannel Panel on Catholic Answers Live. We hope that one of the things that we communicate here at Catholic Answers Live is that our Catholic faith allows us to be fully serious about all the problems we encounter in the church and in the world, but it also lets us have light hearts and maybe even mix in a bit of fun, and that is exactly what our good friend Joe Heschmeyer does in his popular podcast, Shameless Popery. You should check it out at shamelessjoe.com. Joe's got a deep grasp of the faith, morals, the teachings of the church, all that, but he's also got a witty conversational style. He entertains and he informs, but you will leave equipped to better answer the most common challenges, misconceptions, and questions about the Catholic faith. He's got insightful guests, he does on-air debates, and he takes a close look into all the things that you want to know about as a Catholic living today. You'll walk away knowledgeable and filled with joy. Look for Joe on his YouTube channel. Check him out at shamelessjoe.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, become a patron.
Our Lord needs articulate defenders of the truth to spread the joy of the Catholic faith. Catholic Answers monthly giving club, Society 315, helps you fulfill the call in 1 Peter 3:15 to always be prepared to make a defense for the hope that is in you. For as little as $10 a month, you'll help Catholics grow in faith, bring lapsed Catholics home, and lead non-Catholics to the truth. Go to casociety315.com and join today.
From its earliest days, Catholic faith has been lived by a yearly cycle of feasts and seasons. The new book from Mike Aquilina and Adam Lucas, Feasts of Our Fathers, is a one-stop companion for praying and meditating through the holy days and seasons of the Church with help from the most ancient Christian people. Don't just read about the early saints, pray with them. Order your copy of Feasts of Our Fathers now at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. This final panel today, Chris Check is here. Joe Heschmeyer is here. We're talking about all the news from a Catholic perspective. Chris was telling us at the break that Emil Kapaun, the military chaplain.
Yeah, he just climbed the ladder, the ladder of canonization a little bit.
So he's now,
I think he's venerable now.
Venerable. You start out as servant of God, right? That's where you are, and then and then you go to venerable, and then blessed, if you can pull off some miracles, and then, pull off is probably not the correct modifier for miracle, but and then saint. Am I getting this right? I want one of you to tell me yes or no. Am I getting it right?
We have a professional apologist here on the show.
Servant of God, venerable, blessed, saint. And for the last two steps, miracles are needed. It's a little bit different in cases of martyrs, as in the case of Father Capon. So I don't remember exactly how many miracles at which stages.
Okay.
But when they open your cause, you're given the title Servant of God. They then review everything they can find that you've ever written or said to see what kind of life that you led. Obviously people convert, so they're not looking for like salacious early pre-conversion sort of stuff, but they want to make sure you're actually as holy as you seem to be. And that can be quite a difficult task in the modern age with, email and everything else. But fortunately, of course, Father Capon was before all that. And so then after they determine that you lived a life of virtue, then you are declared venerable, which is where we are right now. And then they'll be looking for miracles performed through his intercession that have no medical explanation. And if they can find you, because basically we've done what we can do on the natural end here. We've said this person objectively appears to be a saint, But, things are known only to God. Someone could look good on the outside and not be holy on the inside. So that next step is something that we rely upon God's grace, that he performs miracles through the intercession of such and such venerable. And then this helps to have them declared blessed and then eventually have them declared saints. The process of what's called beatification and then canonization.
The miracle stuff is really fun because the Vatican is very critical of miraculous claims, and I think it's always to our benefit to stress how critical. Like it's not like the old Guido Sarducci thing, and one of them was a card trick.
Yeah. Again, a very dated reference, but yeah.
Guido Sarducci.
Some people are gonna.
He got arrested once, in Rome.
He what?
He got arrested in Rome because he was dressed as a priest because he was Father, and that's illegal.
Oh, wow.
In Rome if you're not a priest to be dressed as a priest. So
I'm
do
happy
you know who
to
Guido
use the
Sarducci is?
canonical
You know who I'm talking
Well,
about?
February or this month was the 50th anniversary of Saturday Night Live.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
And I actually think it's not a very funny show. And there have been moments when it kind of came back a little bit.
Yeah.
But the first not ready for primetime players,
Yeah.
Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd, that was the best.
It was.
I'm gonna go out on a limb.
Eddie Murphy.
Eddie Murphy's the only one that you go, he's what you could say. Give me the 10 best, and it doesn't matter who else is on the list. Eddie Murphy's on the list.
Yeah, I would say so too. But can I say something else about Saturday Night Live?
Yeah.
From
a Catholic perspective, say it because we're doing the news from a Catholic perspective.
I'm going to.
Okay.
I'm going to.
All right.
It's mostly a very trashy show and not funny, but it does have something to do with Catholic Answers.
Yeah.
I think Catholic Answers is the Saturday Night Live of Catholic apostolates. Can I tell you what I mean by that? Actually,
Yes,
I stole this from Joe Heschmeyer.
Oh, was this Joe's
You did.
idea? Okay.
Yeah, I did.
It still seems like a good idea, though.
It's because the cast does change over time. You know something?
Oh, right.
We are coming up on 50 years.
Right.
2029. So we're a little less well known than Saturday Night Live, I think.
We're a little younger. We got time to catch up.
Yeah, we've got 4 years to catch up, or 5. Yeah, but in 2029 we'll be 50 years, and the cast has changed. But it's still the number one.
Okay, so
apostolate.
from that original Catholic Answers cast, which one of them is Chevy Chase? I think it would be Patrick Madrid. I think Patrick Madrid is Chevy Chase.
I mean, everything I hear about Chevy Chase, he is not easy to work with behind the scenes. So maybe
well, I
Patrick
didn't mean
Madrid
it that
would
way.
be
I don't.
the least likely person.
I didn't
to
mean
be
it that way.
Patrick Madrid is a very lovely, easy guy to work with.
I know.
Well,
I was going to say almost anyone else would be a better fit than Patrick Madrid.
Well, I apologize. I didn't know. Okay.
But just
Yes,
can
go
I
ahead.
underscore this? We're not dependent on a single personality. I don't even like that word, personality.
No, I see what you're saying. I've always thought of it more like the Today Show. Like people come in and go out, but it's still the Today
Or
Show.
The View.
They used to have a chimpanzee on the Today Show, the chimpanzee kid. Or the View. Yes, we're like the View from a
We're
Catholic
commenting
perspective.
on current events. We yeah.
Yeah. I did want to get to the mailbag segment because we promised last time that what? We promised last time that we would dump out the mail that we got and we'd go through it. And I think it's time to go through the mail. You guys ready?
Yep.
All right. Thank
Please.
you. Thank you for joining me for the mailbag segment. We'll do it again next week or next time we do Flannel Panel. We got no mail.
This is on.
We
you.
got
This
zero
is
mail.
on you, listeners.
No, we did get one mail, but I couldn't understand it. It was so confusing. I couldn't understand it. But we set up an email address for you to write in, and we would share your thoughts, the issues that you wanted covered, your complaints about Chris or Joe, and the email address was flannelpanel@catholic.com, flannelpanel@catholic.com, and one person used it, and that person
It wasn't clear what.
is not
Can
not a good
can I read
communicator.
it?
Let me put it that
Can
way.
I read it? Because
No.
this one is
Or maybe
an email for the ages.
I hope we're thinking of the same one. Go ahead.
Is it from Batman?
Oh, I didn't know about that one. Tell me
Yeah,
about that.
say the username is Batman Inc., which is already we're off to a great start.
Yes, okay.
Because what is meant, and it says it is just 3 lines. It almost looks like a haiku. Line 1, Islam, the Islamic dilemma. Line 2, Islam, the original Bible was lost/corrupted argument. Line 3, Islam, Muhammad was a false prophet. So this.
Yeah, that is like a haiku. Okay, so that writer, I missed this then. I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Did David send that one
This
to
was
us?
in the mailbag. I think I understand what they were saying. It took me a little bit of deciphering.
They want us to talk about Islam.
Well, yeah, but specifically, like the Islamic dilemma, if I'm parsing this correctly, is the Quran speaks well of people of the book, Jews and Christians, for following some form of the original allegedly inspired books. And so they call them the Torah, which is clearly it's supposed to be the first 5 books of the Jewish Bible, but I think they use it to refer to the whole Jewish Bible because Muhammad doesn't know much about Judaism. And then it refers to something called the Injil of Jesus, like the gospel of Jesus. And this has been the subject of a great deal of debate about what this means. I mean, the obvious sense is Muhammad thought Jesus wrote a gospel and he didn't. But if you say that, then you'd have to say, well, maybe this isn't inspired and Muhammad doesn't know what he's talking about and it's not really from God. So the two camps that Muslims will fall into are to say, Jesus must have written a gospel and Christians hid it, which is a little implausible that all the followers of Christ decided not to keep Jesus's gospel. This is also, by the way, why I don't find the idea of a Q source where there's some sayings of Jesus all compiled in a book that Christians decided not to keep.
Yeah, somebody checked it out of the Christian library and never brought it back.
Right. We should have made 2
Oh
copies.
man, why did we only have one copy of all the sayings of Jesus? All right.
Yeah, delinquent Thomas. Yeah. And then because of that, you either have to say, well, then, you have to believe in this non-existent version of the Bible, or you have to say the Bible, at least in its core form, is divinely inspired, which is what the Quran seems to be pointing to. But if you take that disproves Islam because you cannot harmonize the Old and New Testament with the purported revelations in Islam. So that then leads to the argument that the original Bible was lost or corrupted, or else that Muhammad was a false prophet. So I've worked all 3 lines together into a thought, which is what I think Batman Incorporated was wanting us to do.
Batman Incorporated, I hope that's what I wanted us to do. I missed that we had that. Joe made something out of mailbag, and I thought we had nothing for mailbag. Good job, Joe. Silk purse.
Hey, I do what I can.
You made a silk purse.
You just really offended Batman there.
I did not.
Well, there's the other end of what the silk purse.
We don't
he
have to
made
go
it
into
out.
all the details of every cliche that we use here. All right, mailbag's over then. I want to get to one other. I'll just tease it, and then we'll take a quick break, and we'll come back and discuss it because I don't know if how upset I'm supposed to be about this. I feel like I'm being told by secular media that as a Christian, I'm supposed to have strong feelings about this, but I don't know. They're going to put on the play Jesus Christ Superstar for 3 nights at the Hollywood Bowl. Right? First of all, right there, Jesus Christ Superstar is being put on at the Hollywood Bowl. What are you expecting? But let's just say at the end of that phrase, my expectations are already low. So
I'm already baffled. This feels like we're just pulling random verbs and nouns out of a bag.
But here's the Huffington Post headline: Jesus Christ Superstar writers jumped to Cynthia Erivo's defense amid backlash over her casting because
she's in Wicked.
Cynthia Erivo, the star of the movie Wicked, is going to play Jesus. Let's take a quick break and we'll try to work ourselves up into a blind rage about this and comment that we'll come back on the other side.
Hang on, we'll be right back with more Catholic Answers Live.
The Catechism defines evangelization as the proclamation of Christ and His gospel by word and the testimony of life. But what does that look like in real life? It looks like St. Paul street evangelists out in the public square sharing the good news. We're a Catholic nonprofit that starts conversations by handing out free sacramentals. Then we employ our method of listen, befriend, proclaim, and invite. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization. Visit streetevangelization.com to learn more.
Hi, this is Mike Aquilina with a few words about St. Monica. Her son Augustine is one of the most influential thinkers in human history. Monica was uneducated, yet Augustine called himself her disciple. She taught him good sense, and she prayed him back to the faith after 17 years away.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. It's Flannel Panel today. Chris Check is here, president of Catholic Answers. Joe Heschmeyer, author, apologist, speaker, podcaster. You should check out Joe's work at
Can I say
Shameless
something
Popery.
about podcasting?
Yes.
Which has nothing to do with Shameless Popery?
Yes.
Trent Horn, Council of Trent, 1,000 episodes.
Let's give a standing ovation to Trent Horn for reaching 1,000 episodes. And
by the way,
and a
getting
special
great
shout
press.
out to the AV guys behind the scenes.
Well,
like Thomas West.
Thomas West
and,
is amazing.
And Mike, Metal Mike.
Yep. Mike.
If you
Caprice.
watch his episode today, you can see the shift in the quality of video and audio from when he started in like 2018 until now. And it's like going from watching an old talkie to watching a modern movie. I mean, it is a shocking shift. And the quality is so much easier to watch, so much easier to listen to. And yeah, it's an amazing feat what Trent has pulled off and what the people around him have helped him pull off.
You know, the thing about Trent, since we're just talking about Trent here, I'll just say this. I do think one of the things that people really have come to enjoy about Trent is his hair is never on fire. He's not a guy that's trying to out-drama everybody or out-end of the world everybody. He's so irenic in the way that he, and intelligent in the way that he approaches faith and morals in his podcast and culture.
Yeah, let me say two things about that. One, I think part of that is Trent's disposition. He's not someone who's just going to fly off the handle. But I think some of that is also an in-house. You know, we have a little bit of a Catholic Answers style, and we're not trying to cultivate drama and division and everything else for clicks. And we're leaving views and we're leaving, frankly, money on the table by not doing that. But I'm also increasingly convinced that even if you're not motivated by the love of Christ to operate with a more charitable style, in the long run, the people who go for the clicks and the division and everything else, it will burn itself out. You will
burn yourself out too.
Yeah,
you can't,
absolutely.
That's not healthy.
Right. It's going to be very hard to do 1,000 episodes of just being mad all the time.
Right.
And eventually that shtick runs thin because people need something healthier. It's, one or two outbursts is great. I enjoy it. It's cathartic. You want to have a good yell sometimes.
We're about to do it right now on the next story.
But I'm going to get super ginned up and fly off the handle. But, the reality is you can't do that all day, every day. And it's totally unhealthy as a Christian to try to.
Congratulations, Trent. Congratulations on that and the wonderful success. And he's just a rare person. He's got this rare combination of skills, among them the ability to kind of master social media and grow that thing. I mean, that's not easy to do. A lot of people tried, and that's not easy to do. So good job, Trent. All right, I want to go back to that Huffington Post article because I almost sometimes I don't know if either, I'm going to throw this out there. It may be that neither of you ever feels this way. I almost sometimes feel like the media is trying to bait Christians into, it's like bear baiting. It's like,
this is like the most accessible conspiracy theory of all time. Like, are people trying to gin up controversy for views?
Yeah, I mean,
yes.
Yeah, right. The reason that they're writing headlines like Jesus Christ superstar writer jumps to Cynthia Erivo's defense amid backlash over her casting is they want to see our heads explode. There's some weird impulse that they have to this is called trolling. I've heard of this before. This is trolling, right?
My 1-year-old does this to me. He's learned to say, uh-oh, and so he'll go and just grab a power cord and pretend he's going to pull it out of the wall and say, uh-oh, and it gets the whole family's attention, and any attention's good attention.
Yeah.
And apparently some people are still at that kind of developmental stage, and we should be patient with them.
I think the time to have reacted to Jesus Christ Superstar was in 1971. Right?
I know when it was actually
Tim
relevant.
Rice and who's the big Andrew?
I don't know.
Andrew Lloyd Webber.
I don't know. There's Godspell and there's Jesus Christ Superstar.
Godspell was a little earlier.
I can't keep them straight. I don't know what.
It is an Andrew Lloyd Webber. I just looked it up. I thought it was. The lyrics are by Tim Rice.
Yeah. By the way, both kind of conservative. Margaret Thatcher, conservatives.
Now let me just ask you both this: Is there any situation artistically where it would be acceptable for you for a black woman to play Jesus?
No.
No, really?
I can't think of anything.
Is it because
I can't.
Not okay? So why? Why would it?
Because the masculinity of Christ is not an incidental characteristic. I mean, you could argue that his Jewishness is and isn't relevant, but not from an ethnic perspective. Like, it matters that he's of the house of David, but it doesn't matter about his skin color. It matters, his lineage. It matters that he comes to a particular people who've been set aside. But the masculinity of Christ points to something about the nature of God. Not that God is a man, but that God is other from his creation. Benedict XVI talks about this, that goddess religions always seem to end up blurring the line between creator and creation. So you've got Gaia, Mother Earth
is
all this stuff.
Right.
Yeah, the
Pachamama.
moon goddess, all this. Like, it's all nature religion because there's something very feminine about nature. It's receptive. It's comforting. It's all of these things that we associate with our moms and with femininity. In contrast, the role of the male, even the imagery of seed and fertility points to an otherness. Like, the sower is different from the field. And so God's relationship to the world is more like a sower than it is like the field. And so the masculinity in terms of that imagery and the particular masculinity of Christ are telling us something about the otherness of God, his transcendence, and they're helping us avoid what's called pantheism, the notion that the universe is divine or a kind of earth worship. But then the other dimension to it is Christ is the bridegroom and the church is the bride. And so something is being told to us that's really important, that you don't find God, he finds you. And even when you think you're finding God, it's because he's already placed that drive within you. That, I heard an Eastern Orthodox priest one time, and I think he got this from a Jewish rabbi. He just said the whole story of the Bible, from the original break in Genesis, is the story of God's search for man. Yeah. And it's one of those like inversions where it makes you really think. And it's a beautiful kind of description. The Christ as bridegroom chasing after and pursuing and wooing his people, the bride, it captures that. So getting rid of all of that for the sake of 2025 politics is such a tragic loss. Like, it really sacrifices this true, rich theological depth given to us by God at the altar of, scandal, conventional mores, controversy, whatever you want to say. And that's an incalculable loss.
Did you want to add anything to that?
How could you? That was brilliant, Joe.
Yeah, but but it was entirely focused on the femininity of the performer, not on the race of the performer.
No, because Christ, he comes for all nations. And so if you look at Marian apparitions, if you look even at the way Christ is depicted in art, it's completely fine to depict him in your native culture and place. Everything from the skin tone to the style of dress. I mean, historically, you look at Ethiopian art, he looks Ethiopian. You look at Italian art, he looks Italian.
Right.
And it's not that people literally thought he looked just like them, but they were recognizing that he came for them and not just, in the first century to some other people.
There's an artist who did work for our calendar this year, the Catholic Answers calendar, which is all original living Catholic artists, who I'm very fond of. His name is Daniel Mitsui, and I think he's all or half Japanese. I'm not sure. I've never met him, but I love his work.
Oh, yeah, his work is amazing.
It's amazing, but if you go to his website, Daniel Mitsui, he has an image of Our Mother Perpetual Help that is very traditional and obviously Japanese.
Oh yeah,
and I think it's stunning. It's beautiful.
Right. So I do think this is sometimes part of the strategy of trying to troll people, is mixing a lot of things together and then accusing people of things that are irrelevant. I'm not convinced, and I can't make an articulate case for this. So bear with me for a second, that there could never be a situation where an artist couldn't do it. I mean, like, artists are very complex and they can do all kinds of twists and turns. And so, like in Shakespeare's time, the men played women. So could a woman play, could a woman play a man? I'm not convinced that there's not some artist that couldn't do it. So
I don't have a problem with the idea of a woman playing a man or vice versa in a particular role. Like I think in the case of presentations of Jesus specifically, there's something sort of iconographic about even an actor playing Christ, that you're to see in them not the actor, but Christ. Like, anytime I watch a Tom Hanks movie, I only see Tom Hanks. Even though he does the characters brilliantly, it's like, oh, now Tom Hanks is in the 40s.
Yeah.
Because he's so clearly himself, even as he adopts all these very dynamic kind of roles. And so one of the dangers with the presentation of Christ is you don't want to see the actor. You want to see through the actor to our Lord. And so someone doing something provocative that draws attention to the choice of actor or actress is actually doing the opposite of what I think a good presentation of Christ should do.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I just have the sense that that art can be quite surprising, what an artist can pull off. And I wouldn't be too quick to say it absolutely can't be done. Although I don't deny anything that you said. It's
sure.
And I realize I'm being inarticulate about this, but
I think you're being a little bit conservative in a way. You're saying there may be some situation we haven't thought of, which I think is completely reasonable.
Yeah, yeah. And I would be interested to see this. I mean,
I could imagine a situation where women were in a prison or something like that, and they wanted to put on a play or something like that, and a male actor wasn't available. And something like that potentially could make sense.
Right. Or she's the voice of a cartoon. Or, I'm just, there are all kinds of different ways people make art.
Yeah, okay. I guess if we want to take this, in Prince of Egypt, they wanted to avoid getting bogged down into debates about who got to play the voice of God. So when you hear God speaking, it's the entire ensemble speaking together.
Oh, wow. That's kind of clever.
It is very clever.
Clever.
And it works very effectively. So something like that, where, they're not trying to make some sort of political point, they're actually seeming to sidestep it, is I think I would be fine with that, because there you're not trying to make a false theological kind of point for politics.
In the Cecil B. DeMille picture, who's the voice of God?
No.
It's Charlton Heston.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he went to DeMille and said, "I think I should do God's voice."
Morgan Freeman wasn't available? Well, he's still a baby at the time.
Yeah, so that's Charlton Heston.
Oh, isn't that something?
It's completely believable, by the way.
Which, apropos of nothing, but it reminds me of Gibson's choice of using his own hands as the Roman soldier.
Yeah.
I think that's why
I think there's a bit of a difference between saying I should represent the guy who killed Jesus and I should really play God.
Well, Heston had a healthy self-confidence. Yeah, he had a healthy self-confidence. One thing we haven't done for a long time is I haven't brought in any National Public Radio audio for the two of you. So I want to tease right now that the second hour, a large part of it is going to be responding to National Public Radio audio, because National Public Radio has a program that Terry Gross used to do. Do you remember when Terry Gross used to
Fresh
do
Air?
Fresh Air? And now Dave Davies does it, who used to be her number two. And at least that's the way I understand it. And so
I didn't even realize it's been so long since I've heard Fresh Air that I didn't realize they'd made the switch.
Yeah, at least that's my understanding of how it all went down. And so Fresh Air, the most, really secular. It's a kind of a typical kind of secularism it represents.
Very long-suffering kind of, right?
Yeah.
Terry Gross is.
Yeah. Kind of pseudo-intellectualism. Interviewed a guy who wrote a book about the last 7 popes, and the guy who wrote the book is a New York Times reporter. So NPR interviewing a New York Times reporter about the Catholic Church. Are you kidding me?
Anyone listening, Sai's been so excited to share this.
I couldn't resist. I listened to that hour over and over. It's just so good. So I've got some audio from that I'll play for you the second hour. It's Flannel Panel. Joe Heschmeyer is our guest apologist. And check him out at shamelessjoe.com, or just put in Shameless Potpourri to your machine and find out what Joe is up to. Also, just wonderful podcast. Chris Check is president of Catholic Answers. I am also wearing a flannel shirt, and that qualifies me to be here with them. We'll continue right after this on Catholic Answers Live. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. Joe Heschmeyer here with us. Chris Check here with us. It's Flannel Panel, talking about the news of the day from a Catholic perspective. We're going to get to some audio from National Public Radio. National Public Radio talking to a New York Times writer about the Catholic Church. It was just too much for me to pass up. I almost fainted when I heard that it had happened. And the audio does not disappoint. At least I don't think it disappoints. And we'll play a little quiz game with Chris and Joe regarding that interview that Dave
Can
Davies
I
did.
say something about the framing of that?
Yeah.
So I believe her name is Nicole Winfield. She is the Associated Press, go-to, I don't even know the term, the delegate for Italian politics and the Catholic Church. They got one person covering both of those beats. And, she gets a decent number of things wrong, but overall she's not bad. But it's one of those things where the standard we have is so low that if you had one person covering sports and they didn't play the sport and they didn't follow the sport recreationally and they only kind of knew what it was about, and they would call it scoring points when you get a run, that kind of stuff, where it's even the little things where you're just like, you don't really know what
That's
you're
not
talking
quite
about.
how that goes. Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of that stuff, and we've just kind of learned to accept it. Part of that I know is because, legacy media is dying. But it's embarrassing. They're not dying with dignity. These stories.
If you're going to die with dignity. That's good.
Don't put that with Catholic Answers byline.
Yeah.
That's going to sound really bad in context.
I want
Out of
to
context.
follow up on what Joe says, because I find this especially frustrating in watching motion pictures and TV shows.
I was just going to say this.
So
Yeah, I know what you're going to.
So here's for all of the many people in Beverly Hills right now who are listening to Catholic Answers Live, I want to tell you, free of charge, my staff will consult with you on your script so that you don't make an embarrassing and stupid mistake in your film. I don't even care if you're making an anti-Catholic picture.
Just get
we
basically get the
but
basic right.
We just
Yeah.
want you to represent what the Catholic Church believes and doesn't believe and does and does
Can
not
I talk
do.
with you for a little while about
It's
the
like
free
the
of
Catholic
charge thing?
equivalent
though?
of the Amelia Perez.
I don't really wanna
I
do it free of
withdraw the
charge.
free of charge,
Yeah,
but
right.
what we're going to
They got a lot of money in
is
Hollywood.
way less than you're paying for other
No,
consultants.
it's like they'll have a Catholic funeral in the movie, and just all this weird random stuff is happening. You're like, none of that happens in a Catholic. People just get up and say things, and you're, come on, have some sense that's do you understand what you're
very
depicting?
heavily don't recommend this movie. I saw it back in college, and even the parts
I'm
I
watching it
remember,
tonight. I'm watching it tonight.
Boondock Saints. It's famous.
Oh, Boondock
Yeah.
Saints! I know that movie. They kill
Yeah.
everybody. They literally kill everyone.
I
in the
don't
movie.
think
very
it's as
violent.
funny
It's
as
got
people
everything
say.
you don't want in a movie. But one of the things it has is in the beginning, they're at mass and the priest does the Our Father by himself. Everybody sits and is silent. And I'm like, how did you get something that basic?
I
wrong?
know.
This
Just
is
go to
not
mass
a-
once, and you would know.
Exactly.
Yeah, just like a little research.
You can literally we live stream them. You don't even have to go to if you're gonna catch on fire if you walk in the door. You can pull up a clip online or
just watch a
literally
mass.
show the clip to any Catholic and say, "Hey, is this what happens?"
There are a couple of movies, independent of their opinion of the church, that get things right. Otto Preminger, I don't think he was a Christian, but his movie The Cardinal is
Never saw it.
It's excellent.
Is this one of those 1940s movies?
Maybe early 50s. I like Otto. I like Otto Preminger.
How did you not just assume that?
You've never heard of Otto Preminger?
No, I've heard of
No,
Otto
he's
Preminger.
one of
I
the-
just never heard of this movie.
In Harm's Way.
I don't think I've seen that movie. either.
John Wayne and Kirk Douglas. It's one of the best World War II pictures ever made. Otto Preminger.
No.
The Cardinal's from 1963, so that's basically modern.
Okay.
Chris.
Yeah. Well, what did I say? 50s. All right. But that's accurate. The other one where Robert Duvall and Robert De
The Godfather.
No.
Oh, the two priests. One's a priest
one's
and
a priest and one's a cop.
Yeah.
Or a detective.
Oh, that's such a good movie.
It
What is
is
the name
good.
of that movie?
It is good. And
where he ends up in the desert at the end. The priest ends up out in the desert.
and it's
Yeah,
well
at a parish.
that is accurate. The
Yeah.
scenes.
Is it called True Confessions?
True
I think
Confessions,
so.
yeah.
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 Do you have like some way that you just look this stuff up? How does that work?
Yeah, I do.
That's amazing.
Do you have
I know.
Do you have like a port in the back of your head like Jimmy Akin where you just plug directly in to the world's knowledge?
I mean, you guys are still of the generation that says, I don't know, and that's just the end of the conversation.
Yeah, I know.
Rather than like, I don't know, followed by furious tapping for 15 seconds, and then you're like, now I know.
Well, I think that's just the Christian thing to say, I don't know, when you don't, right?
But you do know, you just don't know yet that you know. You
Can
just
we
need
make
Google
a rule
to tell you.
on flannel panel that we... That
No, there cannot be any. First of all, the answer is no. There's no rules on flannel.
There's
panel.
no Googling for 2 hours.
Oh.
I mean, I sometimes need to pull up the article that Cy is talking about so I can look like I've read it.
All right, let's take a look at this article. I just want to take a real quick look at this National Geographic article. The National Geographic, how will religious populations change in the coming decades? National Geographic apparently feels qualified to answer that question, so they gave it a shot.
Yes.
I just love how okay, let's look into the future with National Geographic. If you ever go back to National Geographic in the 1970s, what will the 2020s be like? We'll all be living underwater and have flying cars. But okay, National Geographic, give it a shot because you'll probably be dead before anybody knows that this is not right. But one of the things that they do predict is that there's actually not going to be that much change in the coming decades. I was struck with how little change is expected in the religious landscape of the world between now and 2050.
Yes. We're about a third of the population, and they say, yeah, we'll probably keep being about a third of the population.
Christians, you mean? Yeah, Christians
yes,
overall. Yeah.
Sorry.
But there will be growth in Islam.
There will be growth in Christianity and Islam, but Islam will be the only one I think that has growth. That's really significant. It's percentage-wise different. Islam is 23% of the earth today. They expect in 2050 for it to be 30%.
Yeah.
Christianity today is 31%, and in 2050 we're expected to be 31%. So it's less than 1% growth.
Now, some might attribute this to the somewhat aggressive evangelizing tactics of Islam. But I think
it's hard to get out once you're in. I don't want to accuse anybody of anything, but I think that might be part of it as well.
Yeah, or get in or die. But they're also having children.
Right. That's an important part of this. I mean, one of the major ways Christians kind of overtake the Roman Empire is just by having more kids than the Romans are.
Well, I'll tell you
Rodney Stark has really good stuff on that. He died recently.
He's great.
But he was seeing all of this stuff before National Geographic was. And we are seeing signs even in the U.S. So Pew just today had an article called Decline of Christianity in the U.S. has slowed, may have leveled off. And what they don't actually say is the numbers are actually up. So if you compare the number of purported Christians, like the Christian proportion of the population went up from 2022 to 2023, and it went up again from 2023 to 2024, just, 1% each time, from 61 to 62, from 62 to 63. But that is not the trajectory that it had been on from 2007 when they started looking till 2019. And so we see this kind of uptick, and that may be leveling off. It may be the decline is slowed, but the reality for that is we see a growth, not just slower decline. We see the opposite of a decline. So that's,
I have to say,
news.
one other thing struck me about this National Geographic chart that they made of the next 50 years. 31%, just today, these are the numbers for today, and see if it strikes you like it strikes me. 31% of the world today is Christian, 23% is Muslim, 16% is unaffiliated, 15% is Hindu, and 7% is Buddhist. If you add all that up, that's 92% of the Earth's population. People are always like, there's hundreds of religions. How could you ever know which one? 92% of the Earth falls into 5 categories. So,
right.
I mean, sure, there's hundreds of religions. There's billions of people, but 92% of for some reason that hit me really hard. Like, it's not that we're not actually as religiously diverse as people pretend.
No, and the religious diversity argument is a dumb one anyway. I mean, it's a very silly argument, partly because it doesn't understand the metaphysical kind of claims being made by different religions. If you think there's some kind of demigod floating out there, that may be true or not. It doesn't matter for the truth of Christianity, meaning the thing you call a god might be a demon, might be an angel, might be a myth. That's not a rival claim at the equivalent level to God is the one who created the heavens and the earth, because Thor didn't create the heavens and the earth even on like a Norse account of things.
Right.
So the real number of claimants about creation automatically goes down tremendously. And then when you delve into it, overwhelmingly, even polytheistic religions are going to say, oh yeah, there's a bunch of these lesser spiritual beings that we call gods, and maybe you'd call angels or demons. There's these lesser spiritual beings, and behind them, there's this one chief God who made everything. He made the heavens and the earth. And it's like, oh, actually, we're pretty close on a lot of this stuff, certainly compared to an atheist. And so the real thing, if you're going to make all the religious diversity claim, is all of these different cultures settled upon a pretty similar account of exactly what happened. And then you, as a 17-year-old atheist living in your mom's basement, decided everybody else was wrong. And like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It just doesn't seem like the preponderance of evidence. You can't be like, well, all of those theories are slightly different, so let's adopt this radically different one. It doesn't work like that.
What percentage of the Earth's population was Christian in, say, the 15th century or the 14th century?
I'd have to. That really would take some research. I'm sure there are demographers who have tried to figure that out, but I don't know in the 15th century.
Well, because if
it
you
would be
have the entire
relatively low.
Asian continent.
I like that you're like, don't Google anything. Here's an extremely specific question.
Wait, you have not memorized the population of the Earth in the 15th century? What's wrong with you, Joe?
Actually, you know what? I was wrong. I was thinking it was going to be way lower than 30%, but Google's AI tells me it was 30%. Now, I don't know where that number's coming from. It's probably wrong, but there you go.
I'll tell you what, another thing that I got from this National Geographic thing, then we better take a break and come back and have some fun at the expense of National Public Radio. If you love Jesus and you want to see a thriving Christian population, help the church in Africa. The place where Christianity is growing is in Africa, and the place where Christianity is facing actual violence regularly is in Africa. So don't forget about Africa.
Catholic
if you love
Answers
Jesus.
just sent books to all the seminarians in Tanzania.
Oh, you did?
Yep.
Well, I mean, we did.
Beautiful.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I said
we
you
did.
did, but we did. I'm glad I did that. All right, we'll be right back with more Flannel Panel, Catholic Answers Live, right after this.
Stay with us for more Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Magnificat. Published monthly, Magnificat features texts of daily Mass, prayers, articles, meditations, art commentaries, and more, in step with the liturgical rhythm of the Church, on the web at magnificat.com.
EWTN has its own official YouTube channel with tens of thousands of videos covering just about every conceivable topic of interest to Catholics. And, best of all, it's free. Every day, EWTN adds new TV shows, live events, devotionals, homilies, and specials to its YouTube channel. Visit the EWTN YouTube channel today. EWTN, the Global Catholic Network.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. All right, the fun part we've been waiting for has arrived, the part where I play clips from National Public Radio from my two friends, Chris Check, president of Catholic Answers, and Joe Heschmeyer, apologist here at Catholic Answers. And this is some magical stuff. Now, Luca, are you ready for this? This is going to be the audio board is going to be taxed now. You're ready? You feel ready? All right. I almost feel like I need to roll up my sleeves. National Public Radio did an almost full-hour interview, maybe a 45-minute interview, about the Catholic Church with a former New York Times reporter. The author wrote a book about the struggles of the last 7 popes. It's called Jesus Wept, 7 Popes and the Battle for the Soul of the Catholic Church. The author is named Philip Shannon. And I have some audio from the interview conducted by Fresh Air host Dave Davies. And first, I want to play Davies' introduction to the interview, and I want to get your reactions, you two. I just want to just react to how Davies sets up this interview about the Catholic Church. He starts up by describing the book and says it's about the power that the popes have to decide issues for more than 1 billion Catholics. And here are the issues that popes decide according to Dave Davies.
Whether they can use birth control or get an abortion or divorce and remain in good standing in the faith, whether priests must forever remain unmarried and celibate, a rule with little biblical authority that fuels a drastic shortage of priests and leaves millions unable to regularly attend Mass or receive sacraments, whether same-sex couples can be accepted in the church, and whether sexual predators will be stopped and held accountable.
I'm glad I took my antidepressants today. But he's got a real happy, cheery view of the Catholic Church. But what do you guys think of that? The popes decide all that.
Okay, first of all, they don't. And anyone who thinks that's the role of the Pope doesn't understand the role of the Pope as the Catholic Church understands it. The Pope can't just be like, hey, murder's okay now. I decided. You can't just overrule the Bible. And that also means you can't overrule sacred tradition. That's not the role of the Church. And Dei Verbum, the Second Vatican Council document on divine revelation, is completely explicit about this. The role of the teaching authority of the Church, called the magisterium, is not above Scripture and tradition, but serves it. So the Pope can't just say, yeah, we're cool with abortion now. It doesn't work like that. Also, the claim that celibacy is fueling a priest shortage, from all appearances, is demonstrably false. Now, I know you'll find people who claim, well, if priests were able to be married, I would join up. But the reality is we have kind of comparison cases. You have, for instance, the Anglicans, and they have married priests. And so you can compare. It's not perfectly apples to oranges or apples to apples, but you can look at places where they have married clergy, and it doesn't solve shortages, and it doesn't solve church growth. And the part about people being unable to go to church because priests can't get married, unless that was just a complete misspeak, seems unhinged.
Chris, what did you think of this?
All of this reminds me of that quote that's in the hallway outside. The Chesterton quote, because our studio is named after Chesterton.
Right.
And it's the world tolerates.
Pays a compliment to the Church.
Yes, pays a compliment to the Church by not tolerating in her
what it tolerates
everywhere else.
Yeah.
Yep.
But did either of you find any maybe bias here about what's important? I don't know. Maybe maybe the only thing the Catholic Church is concerned about is sex. I think every single item.
The so-called pelvic issues, right?
Yeah.
It turns out all that the Church can do, all the Pope can do, is regulate what forms of sexual expression you can undertake. It shows a unique kind of monomaniacal focus, not by the Church.
No,
it's always the people who are obsessed with sex who are like, why is the Church so obsessed with sex? And it's like, we can go a very long time without talking about sexual issues if everybody just follows some pretty basic rules.
I know, right? All right, so
we're much more interested in the person of Jesus Christ, but you don't want to talk about him.
All right, Dave Davies, the host of Fresh Air. I want to play.
Is Dave Davies a lapsed Catholic? Is he?
I don't know. I don't know what he is. I have no idea.
Well, I mean, this is the other thing. It would not surprise me to learn that he is, but my question is, why does he care? If he's not a Catholic.
This is something that amazes me. Is why, like, when people say, well, the Catholic Church, won't allow, women priests or something, like, or won't allow, or used to only have Latin, and some of them want to bring Latin back. Why do you care about that? You're not a Catholic. Well,
right.
Why does that interest you? Like that, those are interesting things, but why does it interest you? Like, you're a secularist working for NPR. Why do you care?
Yeah.
If someone else speaks Latin, it's not going to do anything to you.
Well, it's striking, too, because it really is Catholicism that is singled out in this way, which I think is a sign that it is the true faith.
Yes.
Because, look, you'll find plenty of practices that don't sit comfortably with the liberal politics of the NPR or the New York Times within, say, Islam, or even within Orthodox Judaism. You got gender separation where men and women don't sit together. That sort of thing. If the Catholic Church was doing that, you would hear about that on the news.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
And people who are not Catholic, have never darkened the door of a Catholic church, or maybe haven't since they were baptized as a baby, would feel very qualified to tell the Church how to do things.
Yeah.
And it is kind of striking, A, that they feel that level of comfort, and B, that they feel that uniquely with Catholicism. And in a way, I'm glad they do, because if they feel a sense of belonging with the Church, it's because that's where they should be.
Oh, their conscience is pricked. This is why.
Well, let me go on. What you're saying does remind me of Lenny Bruce's old thing. Lenny Bruce, very secular.
Yeah, there's only
person.
one, the Church.
Yeah, he's like, everybody knows what the Church is. There's only one, the Church. Right. It's the Catholic Church. All right, so here's
I got that line from Dorothy Day's diary, by the way. Her
really?
journal, she records that Lenny Bruce line. And I thought,
I love
she
the fact
becomes
that
a saint.
Dorothy Day was she at a Lenny Bruce show? I bet she was.
I don't know.
Probably
It's a good
smoking in the back. All right.
Uh.
This is Davy's description of what the book Jesus Wept by New York Times writer Philip Shannon. Here's Davy's description of the book.
Sheenan's book is the story of a bold attempt to reform the church in the early 1960s and decades of backsliding that followed under pontiffs more comfortable with conservative traditions and power concentrated in the Vatican.
First of all,
Wow.
NPR, could we get the microphones out of the back of people's throats? I'm so tired of hearing the inner mouth workings of NPR reporters.
It's part of the unique aesthetic. It's like lo-fi in the
but Darren
90s.
Darren said to me, like, if you were going to do a parody of what a secular person thinks of the Catholic Church, if you were going to do like a Saturday Night Live parody of, they think there was this attempt at reform in the 1960s, and then all these evil popes went back on it. Like this is like a parody. Did I get that right, Darren? Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it seems like there's another thesis that would work just as well, which is there were some naive liberal priests who thought they could overturn something Christ had established, and they couldn't.
Charlie
and they
Curran.
found that out the hard way.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, power that stopped them. It wasn't anything like that.
Chris is mic on? I just want to make sure we got it. Okay. Sorry. I didn't know. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. No. Oh, I was just going to say it wasn't power that stopped it. It wasn't like, oh, they, the vast majority of bishops and priests really want to, I don't know, have abortions or something. It's like, no. This is something that even flirting with, overturning moral teachings led to a huge scandal, led to a loss of Catholics in the pews, and was never going to succeed because the gates of hell won't overcome.
Well,
and I understand if someone isn't Catholic doesn't get that, but to describe this as backsliding is really putting not just a thumb on your scale, like it is
just don't get it.
Sitting down on the scale.
Yeah. Chris?
So something did take place, however.
In the 1960s.
So I think of guys like Michael Novak, for example, Charlie Curran, who were successful in promoting contraception, and a concerted effort prior to the release of Humanae Vitae to lobby priests to say that contraception is okay, to say it in the confessional. To absolve people of their guilt in this regard, or whatever it was, and that has continued
to today. He's not wrong about that.
Yeah. So the truth is, Mr. Davies, actually, would that there were more of the backsliding.
I will stand up for there being what he calls backsliding. I mean, if you look in the numbers.
Oh, you could.
No, he's talking, when he said, just to be clear, when he says backsliding, he means that Pope John Paul II
and Benedict
inherited a church that was ready for this Vatican II flowering into becoming a new church, and he backslid back into conservative darkness.
Right.
That's what he's talking about when he says backsliding.
If you look at the numbers, it is literally closer to the opposite of that, meaning the people in the pews and the priests, when you press them on what they think about things, tend to be pretty conservative. And especially if you look at newly ordained priests under 45.
I think this is changing right now, Joe. But if we were having this conversation 10 or 15 years ago, I don't think that would be.
It's an ongoing story. So in the 1960s, 68% of priests self-reported as progressive in the U.S.
Right.
Excuse me, the priests ordained in the 1960s. Even now, 68% of them self-describe as progressive. And from the end of the 1960s, every 5-year cohort after that has become more conservative.
Yes.
So that 68% number is now under 1% for the priests ordained in the last 5 years.
But it's weird that being progressive in the 60s was totally different than being progressive now.
Right.
That's 60
it's very
years
tricky
ago.
to know what someone means by it because they looked at both political and theological. So theological progressives went from 68% to under 1%. Like people who think they can change church teaching. Now, you also see a sea change in politics, but I'm not worried about the political shift. I'm worried about can we change the church teaching on abortion, contraception, and all the other, liberal darlings?
Yeah, right.
Divorce and contraception are something of a litmus test here. It is very unusual to hear a sermon on a Sunday about divorce, even more unusual to hear one about contraception.
I almost never have heard those.
Even from
I don't
one
remember
of this cohort that Joe is describing as increasingly, and I don't like the word, and I'm not blaming Joe for using it because that's what the surveys say, conservative. Right. I would just say orthodox or, but it's the effect of not what the Council Fathers wanted, but of people who ran with one interpretation of it, we're still living with.
I'll tell you what I did. I took Davies' questions for the author, Philip Shannon, and I bumped them out, and I'm going to play the questions for you and then quiz you on what you think the answer will be, and then I will play you the answer. So I turned this whole thing into a quiz. We'll do that quiz right after this on Catholic Answers Live. Have you ever wondered about the mysterious, even obscure aspects of the Catholic faith? Dive into the Jimmy Akin podcast, where Jimmy brings together information from many fields as he pushes the boundaries of apologetics. Tune in today to the Jimmy Akin podcast, Mysteries of the Faith, a highly entertaining, informative, and at times humorous show that will help you grow in your faith. Visit JimmyAkinPodcast.com today to subscribe.
Lots of people have big questions about Catholicism. It needs a big book of answers, and now it's got one. The Big Book of Catholic Answers is filled with helpful replies to more than 250 questions about the faith. Questions about God, salvation history, the Creed, the Bible, the list goes on and on. Order your copy of the Big Book of Catholic Answers today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
What was the church like in its infancy? In a word, Catholic. And Joe Heschmeyer has the receipts. In his best-selling book, The Early Church Was the Catholic Church, he gives you the details from the historical records of the first 2 centuries of Christianity. Right now, get a copy for just $10, plus free shipping if you live in the continental United States. Get more information and order The Early Church Was the Catholic Church at theearlychurchwascatholic.com.
If you're not a Bible scholar, the full message of how the Sunday Mass readings fit together can be tough to comprehend. Apologist Carlo Broussard is here to help. Join Carlo every Friday for the Sunday Catholic Word podcast. In each episode, he unpacks the scripture readings for that Sunday and brings them all together so you can better understand and defend the faith. Visit SundayCatholicWord.com to subscribe. That's SundayCatholicWord.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Anybody who knows me knows how much I love National Public Radio. If you're not in the United States and you need a description of National Public Radio, let me attempt one now. We have a radio network in the United States paid for in large part by the tax dollars of American citizens, which is basically communist. How did I do? Did that... Did that sum up National Public Radio?
I give the communists more credit.
It's not quite, it doesn't quite have the intellectual heft of communism, does it?
No, it's sort of juvenalia.
The reports everything from the perspective of transgenderism for the last 5 years, but this one not so much. Dave Davies is doing an interview with a former New York Times reporter who wrote a book called Jesus Wept, 7 Popes and the Battle for the Soul of the Catholic Church. It's a very dramatic book. Basically, the premise of the book is that the church had a chance in the 1960s to fix all this stupid stuff like doing what Jesus said, and they could have done what they wanted, and but we didn't. We backslid into things like, I don't know, morality. I want to do a little quiz now, and here's how it goes. Basically, the format of Davies' interview from here on out is he asks this New York Times reporter about each of the popes, and so he has a little set of questions he has for each of the popes. So I'm not going to do all of the popes; it's too much to do 7 in the amount of time we've got to do, but. Let's start with John the 23rd. And Davies asks about Pope John the 23rd, and he just simply asks this question. What did he do? And now here's your ABC answer. What does this New York Times reporter report that Pope John the 23rd did? He says, he is the hero of this book because he invited the world's bishops to remake the church as they saw fit. That's A. B. He is the hero of this book because he strove to reform the liturgy. C. He is the hero of this book because he tried to overturn centuries of sexual repression. A, B, or C, gentlemen, which one do you think the New York Times reporter is going to say?
I'm
going to go C.
I'm going with C also.
He's the hero of this book because he tried to play the sound effect. And that's the wrong sound effect anyways, because they both got it wrong. Play the clip.
Oh, was it A?
Play the clip.
Well, he's really the hero of this book, but he is this roly-poly Italian man, balding, treasures his peasant roots, who suddenly finds himself thrust into the leadership of the Roman Catholic Church. And he makes clear from the very start that, as you say, the grim sobriety of Pius's reign is over. He loves telling jokes. He loves mocking the idea of an infallible pope. He is really a blank slate when he's elected in terms of doctrinal matters. But he quickly makes clear that he's ready to overhaul the Catholic Church. He's ready to invite the world's bishops to come to Rome to remake it as they see fit without his interference.
But Pope John Paul is the hero of the book because he invites the world
Pope John
bishop,
the 23rd.
Oh, excuse me, Pope John the 23rd, because he invites the world bishops to come to Rome to remake the church as they see fit without his interference. Is this a fair characterization of the roly-poly Pope?
It is not. He's a saint, by the way, now.
Yeah, Saint John Paul.
Yeah.
St. John the 23rd.
He certainly carries on and continues with the social teaching that begins in the modern age with Leo XIII. He does convene the council, but not to remake the church.
It's always striking to me, like the people who tell this story, who they put in kind of the role. And John the 23rd is a nice one to do because he dies partway through the council. So
really, after
all
year
you have
one,
are,
he's early. He dies after year one of the council.
That's right. And so it's easy to make him a sort of blank slate to project all of your wishes and fantasies onto.
Right.
Because you don't have to say, well, in reality, he didn't implement it the way I would have implemented him, like you do with Paul VI. St. Paul VI, he takes the council and he implements it, and everything looks good on paper. And when you actually do it in practice is when things get really tough.
The other thing about this fellow is he kind of makes it sound as if they found John the 23rd on a farm somewhere.
Yeah, they went out and they just found this guy. I don't know how they got him to be Pope.
And he's completely blindsided. Now, I actually am largely ignorant of the ecclesial career of John the 23rd, but I'm guessing he probably held some rather significant offices.
He was a Vatican diplomat. He had been stationed as
was he in Turkey? He was in Turkey, or was
he was in
Paul,
Paris? I don't know if he was in Turkey.
I know Paul VI was in Turkey, he's like he was milking a cow.
Yeah, and they said, "Hey, could you be Pope?
You're Pope now." Yeah.
He was Patriarch of Venice, which is a very prominent role
and worldly. Yes.
So
he'd been. I've got his career right here. I don't just know it offhand. He'd been the apostolic delegate to Turkey, then to Greece.
I got Turkey.
Good,
very
good.
You
did.
Yeah. Yes. And I did not use Google.
Do you know his famous comment to a woman in Paris who was at a reception with him wearing a miniskirt? Have you ever heard of it? Oh, it's a lovely dress, ma'am. Where's the rest of it?
Yeah.
He was a funny guy. He was a very funny guy. All right, so Davies now wants to know about the Latin Mass. Because this is the sign that you're a real regressive if you're interested in Latin.
Guilty.
So they spend quite a bit of time on the Latin Mass. And what did the author of this book discover about Jesus that drove home for him that the Mass should not be in Latin? He made a discovery in his research for the book. Was it A?
I think I can guess this one.
Was it A? It was harming evangelization efforts. Having the Mass exclusively in Latin was harming evangelization efforts. Was it B? There was some danger of people not fully participating in the Mass? Or was it C? Jesus didn't speak Latin with the apostles. Which reason does this New York Times author give for his becoming convinced that the Latin Mass had to go?
Yeah.
I'm going to guess that after all of his years of careful research, he discovered that Jesus did not speak Latin.
Really?
So I'm gonna go with
With his apostles.
well, he didn't speak Latin with the apostles, yeah.
He probably
Yeah.
spoke Latin with Pilate.
Yeah,
I mean, it's right there in the movie.
Yeah.
All right, let's have clip 4, and we will find out what did this intrepid reporter find out about the history of the Catholic Church that convinced him the Latin Mass had to go.
Something that I learned in the course of this that I hadn't really understood before is that, Jesus did not speak to his disciples in Latin. He spoke to them in Aramaic, which was similar to Hebrew. And then for 300 years after the crucifixion, the language of the church was Greek. And it's only in the 4th century when church power moves to Rome that Latin is introduced.
Wait. What did he say happened in the 4th century?
The church power moved to Rome, and then Latin was introduced.
Yeah.
That's not. I mean, that's poorly said, but you get the idea. I mean,
Well, it's not true, but it's less untrue
than the Pope was on a
Jesus
farm.
Was,
by the way-
Veni Vidi Vici and with the apostles.
Right.
You know what? I'll take his narrative at face value, twisted as it is. The 4th century was a long time ago.
Yes, I realize that. I realize that.
So there has been an established tradition of Latin being the language of the church for a very, very long time.
But I think it's funny that he discovered in his research that Jesus didn't speak Latin. What is that? That's weird.
If I decided to write a book about Wall Street and said in an interview, I discovered there are these things called calls and puts.
Yes.
And they're not like in baseball at all.
No.
And you'd just be like, okay, this person is clearly unqualified to write a book.
Right.
Like this is a child's understanding. Like, I got into a debate with my 5-year-old. I didn't win it somehow. I got into a debate with my 5-year-old as to whether the angel Gabriel said to Mary, "Hallowed be your name," the fruit of thy womb or the fruit of your womb. There it is.
Oh, it's thy.
Not even the right person.
Yeah, it's thy for sure.
And she's like, well, sister told me at school that it was your womb. But in our prayer, we say thy womb. So I want to switch it. And so I had to explain to her at 5, this wasn't originally said in English. And that's understandable. But this man sounds much older than 5.
Yeah.
He does. I mean, just by the depth of the tone of voice, yes.
Right.
But by the expertise, not really.
He should know the Greek and Latin thing. I mean, I understand if you don't know all the ins and outs that the eastern half of the empire was speaking Greek and the western half was speaking Latin. And
right.
all of that. I mean, I get that. But if you think that the apostles in 1st century Palestine were speaking Latin, it reminds me of an old story that I want to say Monsignor Ronald Knox shared, where they were asking for Catholic priests in one of the 2 world wars, and in the British Army. And they said, well, what about the French priests? Can't you just confess to them? And they said, no. I mean, how are they going to hear our confessions? And they said, well, don't you just make them in Latin? And they just assumed like every Irish GI knew enough Latin to confess his sins, just like number and kind, all in Latin. And it's just like, well, you hear these things and you think, okay, maybe they're not malicious, maybe they're just woefully ignorant.
Yeah, but the woeful ignorance combined with the solemn tone of uncovering hard truths is really sort of devastating. All right, when we come back, I want to ask you, Dave Davies asked the author of Jesus Wept why Pope Paul VI was so against modern sexual immorality. And what's the answer? We'll find out right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
You're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Hi, this is Father Mike Schmitz. Please join me for Ascension's Bible in a Year and Catechism in a Year here on EWTN Radio. We're going through the entire Bible and the Catechism in 365 days. If you've ever wanted to understand what it means to be Catholic and allow those truths to shape your life, this is for you.
Bible in a Year and Catechism in a Year with Father Mike Schmitz, tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific on EWTN Radio.
Who was the first Catholic in your family? Were they evangelized by a friend, a coworker, a stranger? Did you ever think that you could be that person that God uses to save a soul? And that soul could save their family, their grandchildren, and generations to come. At St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, we train, equip, and mobilize Catholic disciples to do the urgent work of evangelization. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization, streetevangelization.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. 1 year and 2 months from right now, Catholic Answers is taking a Rhine River cruise pilgrimage. Going to visit lots of medieval and later than medieval Christian holy sites. We're going to have a great time together. We're all on a boat together. There is no one else on the boat. The whole boat is reserved for Catholic Answers folks. Joe's going to be there. Chris is going to be there. I'm going to be there as long as I don't get in trouble between now and then. I'm working on it.
It's a long way away.
I know, but I'm trying to just calm down and not get in any more trouble around here.
Yeah.
You can find out. Where can you go, Chris, online to find?
Cruise Catholic. No.
Not Catholic Cruise.
Excuse me. Catholic Cruise. CatholicCruise.com.
One job.
I know, honestly.
May 2nd through 14th, 2026. There's also a pre-cruise adventure that you can check out in Amsterdam, but we would just love you to come. Go to CatholicCruise.com and find out all about it. CatholicCruise.com. Right now, we're listening to some audio. I've been for years been presenting National Public Radio audio to Joe and Chris. I don't know if you guys remember the time that we did the one on the pro-life movement, and the guy was like, they started getting together and having meetings and they called the movement pro-life, and he said it like it was the worst thing ever.
Yes.
So I love bringing these little bits of audio to you guys, and now we're talking. Dave Davies on Fresh Air did an extended interview with Philip Shainon from 20 years at the New York Times, and he wrote a new book. He's the author of several books: Jesus Wept, 7 Popes, and the Battle for the Soul of the Catholic Church. And now we're up to Pope Paul VI, and he asked why. Davies asked the author, why was Paul VI so against modern sexual immorality? And he listed a bunch of sexual things that he thought the church should stop being against. And was the answer A, that Paul VI thought that these immoralities would harm families? Was it B, that Paul VI wanted to maintain control over women's bodies? Or was it C, Pope Paul VI was secretly gay? Was it A, he thought that sexual immorality would harm families? B, Pope Paul VI wanted to maintain control over women's bodies? Or C, Pope Paul VI was secretly gay?
It's got to be B.
What do you say, Joe?
B is pretty dumb, but C is outrageous. And I think this guy doesn't. I mean, this is a guy who just discovered Latin. It's not like Jesus' native language. So,
okay.
I'm going to go with C as like, you can't make this stuff up.
So you're going to say that the guy says Paul VI was so grumpy about sexual immorality because he was secretly gay? That's what you're
this was the gay lobby that was against Paul VI taking a very firm stance on sexual morality, spread rumors that he was gay as a way of trying to undermine his authority.
And you're going to say it's because he wanted to control women's bodies?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please play clip number 5.
Oh, no.
I don't think Paul foresaw the sort of chain of events that would follow, but very quickly he became engulfed in a scandal in Italy in which people were talking openly about rumors that he himself was gay.
Yeah.
That's the level we're at.
So
that's the level we're at.
I mean,
like, if you this is what
clear.
Yeah, go ahead. Yes, please.
The rumors are spread by an openly gay Frenchman. I know that's not redundant. And he was
the French, the English, the
I
Italians.
It's not redundant. He was
wow.
An openly gay Frenchman who was living a disgustingly dissolute lifestyle, was a terrible critic of the church. And he's like the least reliable person you could turn to. I mean, if you said like, oh, this horrible anti-Semite has some negative things to say about the local rabbi, you're like, well, yeah, I'm going to take that with a grain of salt. But for some reason, this is just being passed off as like, well, rumor says on National Public Radio. That is actually kind of shocking.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
it seems to me that this is an almost adolescent. I don't agree with you on sexual morality. Then you're gay. Like that's
right.
Like it just seems so childish. This is like
It
what
is.
what
It's a
level
way
are
of
we
trying to
at
shut down
NPR?
debate.
I just need one of you to help me with the syllogism here, because if he were struggling with same-sex attraction, wouldn't he
Wouldn't he want to open things up?
or in favor of it? In fact, wouldn't he, use the power of his office to commit a kind of subterfuge?
Well, no, I think this
not
is the
even some-
hydraulic theory.
This guy is of the belief the Pope can just, at his whim, reverse church teaching.
Right. So
like that's earlier. So it is very strange. It's like saying, "Oh, he outlawed this because he really wanted to do this."
Yeah, exactly. It's this. That's why. Yeah, I don't know.
All
but
right.
the fact of the matter is, if you read Humanae Vitae, Paul VI makes some predictions, all of which have come true.
Yeah, I think that people have taken to calling him a prophet. They came true.
Can I point out a good article on this on a website called Catholic Answers? Catholic.com.
Is it by Joe Hefmeyer?
Tim Staples, actually. The 3 prophecies of Humanae Vitae, where he looks, it turns out you don't have to guess why Paul VI was worried about things like contraception.
He told you.
Because he wrote a document where he tells you.
Yes.
And then it turns out to be a pretty prophetic diagnostic of what you can expect in a world that accepts contraception.
And the abuse
And then
of
we were like, nah, that'll never happen. We did it. We got all the negative effects. And we're like, it's probably a coincidence.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Read that article. It's really important to see that.
The abuse of women is one of the ones that he lists there, that he identifies.
Yeah,
The
and
denigration.
We live in a society that, well, as we said last time, desperately needs Taylor Swift because even very young women are feeling horribly abused by this society.
Yeah,
and
that
they're not
makes a lot
wrong.
more sense in context, but yes.
All right. Well, I don't want to. I'm not going to play you any audio on Pope Benedict or Pope John Paul II, and I'll tell you why. Both of them, he covered only one topic. As one topic that covered both of them, not one topic each, one topic. So I'll just ask you this. What was the topic that covered the entire conversation about John Paul II and Benedict?
Homosexuality.
The abuse scandal.
No, it was much more specific than that. It was
Transgenderism?
It was a person.
Oh.
There was a single, his entire discussion, these two men discussing John Paul II and Pope Benedict, one person's name took up the entire discussion.
Hitler.
Nope.
Reagan.
McCarrick.
Oh.
That's it. So that tells you everything you need to know about John Paul II and Benedict. There's nothing else to say. It all was about Theodore McCarrick. All right, so I'm going to play the last question.
Fascinating.
I'm going to play the last question that Davies asked now, and I'll tell you what we'll do this time. I'll let Luca play the question, clip 6, please, and after he plays the question, I will do the ABC, and then you pick which one is the answer. So this is the question Davies asks the author of the book Jesus Wept. Go ahead. You're doing great, Luca.
You know, in this book, you point out a lot of hypocrisy and corruption in the church, and some may regard the book or maybe this interview as anti-Catholic.
No.
Yeah, after all of these years of research, how do you regard the value or harm of this institution?
If I could just say once again, the slow unwinding of that question of just pure anti-Catholic nonsense. How do you regard the harm or value of this institution? Get over yourself, Davies. I mean, is the Catholic Church good or bad? He's asking. All right. So
but if you can throw in harm first, and if you can say institution, you've colored the question in a certain way, which is actually very artful.
Yeah,
it's bad, but artful.
It's do you still beat your wife?
Yeah. So here's asked by a guy that is amazed to find out Jesus didn't speak Latin to the apostles. Okay, so
is Cy Kellett horrible, or does he have good qualities?
Yeah, right. Well, the answer to that,
no,
I
believe,
still
horrible.
Is both. I believe it's a both. I'm a Catholic, both and.
All the hypocrisy. Anyway, go on. I'm sorry.
But you're such a. All right. So how does the author respond? He says, A, the church is dying, so it doesn't really matter. It will fade away in the centuries to come. Or B, the church is the greatest practitioner of charity in the world. Or C, Jesus and the apostles would be surprised and disappointed in what the church has become. So
it's got to be C.
C for sure.
Really?
This guy understands Jesus so well. He knows he doesn't speak
Latin.
Latin.
Research.
All right, let's play clip number 7, please.
whatever your religious background, you have to admire much of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And the message of mercy and tolerance is a noble one. You don't have to be a Christian to see the wisdom of what Jesus Christ offered to the world, 2,000 years ago. That there is this institution that claims to act in his name, I think would surprise the Savior and would surprise his disciples and apostles. And I think they would be enormously disappointed by how often the Roman Catholic Church fails to live up to the message of the gospel, and how often it has allowed itself to be corrupted by very human weaknesses.
Who doesn't know human weakness well?
What?
Jesus, apparently.
Yeah, I know. The guy that the gospel said he needed no one to tell him what was in men's hearts. He's the guy that prophesied that the wheat and the chaff would grow up together. Nonetheless, he's like, I'm so disappointed in you Catholics. I thought you were going to do better than this.
So a couple things here. One is, if he'd done a little more research, he might have found some occasions of intolerance in Jesus. One or two.
Yeah, I like that he reduces Jesus' message to a coexist bumper sticker.
But here's the fun. No, this is the funny thing.
In
though.
this house, we believe.
He refers to.
Go ahead.
So this is the striking thing, and I'm curious who this fellow is. He refers to him as the Savior.
I know.
Yeah,
I love that.
Okay, so
if he really didn't know what was going on in the church, he couldn't foresee the future. He had no clear message and he didn't know the nature of man. That's no Savior. He wants to use all the glorified language about Jesus while denying everything that makes Jesus great.
Well, but Savior refers specifically to the act at Calvary.
Yes,
Calvary.
right, and he no reference to that.
Yeah, but I mean that is how the salvation comes to pass, and so there is so there's by using that by describing him as the Savior, he is at least maybe not paying attention, but he's at least acknowledging there's something supernatural at work here.
Well, I think he's just using the jargon, and I think Joe's right. He's doing it to cover the fact that none of this is about Jesus Christ. All of this is about you people are a disappointment.
You can't believe Jesus is who he says he is and mount the critiques that you're making. So I think the real takeaway from this is his critiques work if you have, number one, an obsession with sex in a totally unhealthy way. Number two, a complete misunderstanding of even the basics of the Catholic Church, of the biblical presentation of Jesus. And number three, you reject Jesus's claims about himself and who he presents himself to be. And the fact that NPR is treating all of those as like neutral claims someone should just make without really challenging them on that is genuinely tragic, because you could have someone who understood any of these things and challenge them and have, I was going to say a good debate, not a good debate. You could have a thrashing, but it would at least lead people a little closer to the truth.
Do either of you think that a Catholic listening who struggles and fails and does not live up to the gospel in his or her own life, that Jesus is disappointed with them?
He knows what's in the heart of man.
Yes.
He's incredibly merciful. He's a good shepherd who comes after the lost sheep. And so, that really is. Here's the thing. Okay, we don't have time for me to get totally on my soapbox. But what makes Jesus' message so much bigger than tolerance is he doesn't tolerate sin. He heals it. And that's so much better than just enduring and tolerating it. He's actually doing something about it.
Or calling it no longer sin. Joe, you
Right.
should get this guy on your podcast.
Which one? Davies or the other guy?
No, not Davies.
Sheenon?
The fellow who wrote the book. Yeah.
The guy that
I
wrote
can
the book.
see why Jesus wept now after hearing about his book.
Jesus
Oh,
wept.
what did he? I thought we were going to get to Pius XI. You told me the previous 7 popes. We didn't even get to Pius XI.
That's no. Pius the 12th is 11.
It's 7.
Yeah,
Oh.
because John. Remember they murdered John Paul I.
Oh, I forgot about
the mafia murdered.
Well,
him.
wait, are we counting Pope Francis a previous pope?
I would.
Oh no, he doesn't. He just means the 7 popes since, or of the
Okay.
current era. Yeah. Joe Heschmeyer, you shameless papist. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Check out Joe's work at Shameless Popery wherever you get your podcasts. Chris Check.
And pray for Pope Francis.
Oh,
Amen.
please do pray for Pope Francis and Chris Check. Thank
Join
you. God
the
bless
flannel panel on the Rhine 2026. CatholicCruise.com.
And NPR, you're doing great. Keep these interviews up. They are nothing but gold. That'll do it for us. We'll see you next time, God willing, right here on Catholic Answers Live.